Okay, so hello everyone, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in this video. Today we have a special video indeed. I've got Steve Mitchell from The Mind of Watercolor here with me. Yes, and I'm really excited. Steve is one of the main channels I've been following ever since I got started in watercolor in general, and I really think he has one of the core watercolor channels out there I think are a must for beginners. So I'm really happy to have you, Steve. How are you?
Hey, doing great, Liron. Great to be here. This is exciting. It's fun. I love doing these lives, and I'm so flattered that you think my channel is a core channel. So that's great. Not sure if that's totally deserved, but I'll take it.
My pleasure, it is. So yeah, so you are experienced with lives. This is my first one, so I hope it'll go well. So what I've got here is I want to interview Steve and kind of get into an angle maybe that your followers and my followers don't get to see of you because we do share followers. I think a lot of my followers, I see some of them comment on your videos and some. And
Mhm.
I think it'll be just really interesting to try and tap into unexplored territories. So what we're gonna do now, we're just gonna roll with it. So I wanted to start with actually what kind of a kid you were, and if you showed any interest in art from a young age or something like this.
Yeah, yeah, I did. Actually started drawing pretty regularly at about the age of 6, I guess. uh, I had one of those books. My mom bought me that. You've probably seen them in stores where they like show you how to draw
Yeah.
step by step from shapes, basic shapes. So I would copy those. And, I was a pretty active outdoor child. So I didn't do a lot of that until I was about the age of 10. My mother took a drawing class herself. And so she would
Mm.
come home with these assignments, and she had a book. It was more geared towards adults. The guy's name was John Nagy. It's Gnagy, and you have to be my age or older to know who that is. But he was like at one time the Bob Ross of drawing,
Mm.
and he had these TV shows where he put out all these books. And I used to take her books, and I thought my mother was pretty good artist. The way she tells a story is she threw up her hands and gave up when she saw me starting to draw. I think that's an exaggeration. I
Yeah.
I think that she could have been every bit as good, but I that nevertheless at the age of 10, that was pretty encouraging to me to hear her say that. It's like, oh, I can be
Mm.
as good as an adult. So I just drew off and on. My interest didn't revolve around art. I didn't go to a school that had any good art programs. So
Mm.
when I was in high school, my mother tried to find me lessons because we didn't have an art department. I went to a really small school, high school, and uh, I enrolled in a couple of like craft store, you
Mm.
know, like Michael's would. Well, I don't know if you know what Michael's is, but Michael's, people in these states know. But Michael's and Hobby Lobby will have little kind of hobby craft or drawing kind of classes. And my
Mm.
mother enrolled me in one of those. And I had acrylics at the time. My first paints were a set of acrylics. Well, I probably played around with watercolor, but my first serious paints
Mm.
were acrylics. So I was painting in that, and she enrolled me in an acrylics class. And immediately, I didn't see it, but she said that that teacher had nothing to teach me. And I don't know if that was true, but again, that was to hear her tell it. And you know how mothers can be. But I did have some ability. So I right up until college, I painted mainly with acrylics. So that kind of covers my childhood.
Mm. Yeah, so you generally were really encouraged to, I guess, continue with art and creation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My parents were mostly musicians, and even my sister. I have one
Mm.
sister. They all ended up going that way, and I had some abilities that way, but I opted for art.
That's
And
amazing.
just did it on the side, basically. In fact, before I went into college, what I wanted to do was be a park ranger.
Oh, really?
And I thought I could be a wildlife artist and a landscape artist on the side.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it. So
Yeah, these two seem to
yeah,
work really interestingly
it
together.
it did.
Yeah, that's cool. Was there a time where you decided to become like serious around art or making it a career, I guess?
Yeah. In fact, I gave up the idea of uh, being a park ranger once I saw the science classes I needed to take. Now I like science, but I I like the college level art programs better.
Mhm.
So when my mom and dad kind of basically said, "Well, you might be able to make a living at this," and I thought, okay, I really don't think I'm interested in commercial art, but maybe I can go on in business and
Mhm.
learn retail. And in fact, that was my plan. I did get an art degree. I went on to immediately start working in retail, and I got hired in some retail management programs for two different chains. And I thought this would be a good way to learn, how to manage a business, and maybe
Mhm.
eventually I can keep doing art on the side, promoting myself that way, and maybe eventually, um, I can have my own gallery and learn the business side that way. Really, what I should have done is gotten more in a business degree, but quickly found out that I hated retail,
Mhm.
and I started seriously considering commercial art. So there was a new marketing firm opening up, and I'd only been in retail now probably 3.5 years, and there was a new marketing firm opening up, and they were looking for illustrators and designers. So I applied with absolutely no uh,
Mhm.
experience, and they hired me. So they hired me in an entry level, and that's sort of started it all. They immediately went out of business. But I gathered a little bit of knowledge in that short time that I started freelancing,
Mhm.
and I went ahead and freelanced for 3 or 4 years. I didn't have the good experience, but I gained it. Went to work, eventually went to work for another marketing firm. I was an art director, ad agency, marketing agency, art director for almost 6 years.
Mhm.
And that was probably the biggest developmental phase, because I needed to be around, the client side of it, the other artist side of it, and I picked up a lot there, and most of it I didn't learn in school. And then uh, I left that marketing firm and tried going out on my own again. The first stint at freelancing was not very successful. This time it was a lot better. I had some contacts and I had some experience.
Mhm.
So that was in 1994. And from then up until now, I've been working for myself ever since. So
Mhm.
right up to the point where I started this YouTube channel, was I doing freelance commercial illustration and design.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah.
When you said 94, I thought about the fact that I was 4 back then. So yeah, that segues nicely. I really wanted to ask you about that time because I did a bit of research, and I read that about your career also as a graphic designer, and I'm interested if there was like a particularly interesting client you worked with.
Oh boy, there were a lot. Particularly interesting client. Um, Interesting. I can interpret that several
Mhm.
ways. Uh,
I thought maybe even someone that people have heard of or something like this, you know.
well, when I was at the agency as an art director, our biggest client was Toro.
Mhm.
Toro makes all these yard machines,
Oh, okay.
mowers and stuff. Actually, we worked for the irrigation division.
Mhm.
So I got to work with a lot of beautiful photography because Toro was one of the largest irrigators of golf courses at the time.
Mm.
And they were in competition with like Rainbird and a couple of others. But that was interesting. I got to do some really great design work for them. It was neat being able to work for an international company. And so from a design standpoint, that it's kind of hit or miss on the others. I've done work for General Electric. That was kind of interesting. That was as a freelancer. Most of that was their sports lighting division, not the general consumer. So some of the design work I recall was really fun for them because it involved lighting of stadiums like soccer fields, football field, baseball fields, security lighting, industrial lighting. Let me think what else. And on the illustration side, I did a lot. I did several things for Disney.
That's where I was getting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't work directly for Disney. As a matter of fact, I was 3 times removed from Disney, and this is pretty common in the publishing industry. The work was not like all original. It was, at the time we called it platoon work, where several artists work on the same project. So, you don't get a lot of credit, but it was still fun. I worked on books for Hercules, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I did books for that. And what I did was basically colorizing, airbrushing, colorizing. They sub out the work. What I was working for an agent in New York that worked for a publishing company that licensed Disney. So and
Direct
I was
connection.
actually, yeah, it was. So I was helping 2 other illustrators that were in my local area here because they had more work than they could handle. So it was almost 4 times removed, but still, it's like we're doing Disney work. It was kind of fun, but it was also very, very hard because Disney can say jump and you just have to ask how high. So deadlines were excruciating.
Yeah.
But I don't know what else I did. I did several children's books for Matchbox.
What's Matchbox?
Matchbox is a toy company that makes little cars.
Oh yeah, I know these. I love these.
Yeah,
I
but
love
they
these
had all
as a
these storybooks that you could buy to kind of go along with some of the cars that they sold. They're adventure storybooks.
Yeah.
So there was some of that, and I did a whole lot of boring stuff. I live in an industrial area, so I did a lot of industrial illustration,
I get
and
it.
not particularly interesting, a lot of it, but it was good. I learned a lot of computer skills, and eventually, at least for technical illustration, airbrush kind of went the way of the dinosaur, and you were doing all that on computer. Because that's the styles, they wanted highly accurate, highly rendered type work. I did some stuff for Champion Aviation, for instance. I could name several industrial companies that you probably wouldn't recognize. I've done manuals for Ryobi tools, done illustrate their tools, and like the assembly. I did assembly manuals for Delta tools. They do a lot of woodworking, things like that. So,
and so I wanted to ask you, what made you make the switch back to fine art, I guess, or maybe make that more of your focus? Because you do mention that, I believe, also in your blog.
Yeah, you get a bit over time. You just feel the urge to do that, and I did try to keep doing some fine art on the side. A lot of times, you come home or end your day working on commercial stuff and you're too tired to kind of put your art brain in gear. But I tried to keep doing it. The older I got, and I'm not that far from retirement now. So I started looking, and I always thought it would be great to do instructional videos. And watercolor, going back to college, was my first love. I kind of transitioned out of acrylic into watercolor due to one professor in particular.
Mm.
So it was always my biggest in commercial art. So, I mean, there is in some illustration forms, but, through the 90s, the big thing was airbrush. Everybody was doing airbrush.
Yeah.
And then that transitioned into computer. But the watercolor illustrators were a very narrowly focused group. And it was usually in areas that in genres that I didn't rub shoulders with, so I didn't get to do any of that on a commercial basis.
Yeah.
But I always kept trying to do watercolors on my own. Actually, right around 2000, 2001, 2005, somewhere in that range, I decided to go back to square one and learn watercolor all over.
With watercolor in particular.
Yeah, just for myself, just on my own, because I really was not happy. I felt like I was in just set habits.
Yeah.
With watercolor, I was using student grade watercolor, cheap brushes, even as a professional, and I did get a few assignments. So I didn't know anything about it, and started educating myself on better pigments, better brushes.
I do want to get your take on, I wasn't planning on asking that necessarily, but what's your take on tools and how important are they? Because I do see a lot of, one of the best Israeli watercolor artists here uses Cotman's and like a cheap paper. So I'm really curious to get your take on it.
Yeah, I think they're very important. I don't think that is as much importance on that as people place. I think you've seen this too in YouTube. People just think that that's like, the magic.
What is the brush you're using?
Yeah.
What's the palette?
If you don't get that just right, you're not going to have the magic. Well, as the saying goes, the magic is not, it's not in the brush and it's not in the paint.
I will say that when I moved to a better paper, I did feel the magic. That was the only time. The first time I tried Arch paper.
I completely agree. Agree. The paper was the big factor for me as well. And I was fortunate enough that going way back to college, my first watercolor instructor started us out that way. So yeah, I mean, I think I put it this way. I think the materials are important enough when you're good enough or competent enough to know the difference. Some people it's not going to make a difference in how you paint. People, beginning artists just don't spend enough time drawing.
That's a good observation. That's a really good one.
You've got to be pretty advanced before you really start to notice how the difference will make a difference, I guess is the way to say it. But yeah, it does make a difference, but not so much to a beginner. But the paper, totally agree with the paper. Got to have that right.
And why do you attribute your you falling in love with watercolor specifically to that teacher that you mentioned? I'm just curious.
It was just something that clicked. He was a landscape painter. I loved what he was doing and how he did it. And I just watched every stroke, and I felt that it was something I understood from the beginning. And I did. And really, as a graduate, we had to come up with a show, an art show. And every single one, after that class, every single one of my professors said, you need to do a show in watercolor. So, you don't get much more handwriting on the wall than that. So.
Yeah. That's cool. That's great. So on the topic of watercolor, I'm actually curious to know if on your way, because it's such an interesting medium, I guess, that it can really, I say, punch you in the face sometimes when you're sure you got it, and then you get like a terrible series of paintings or something like this. I wonder if you've had like a consistent challenge that you overcame with watercolor. Like, I can name a few of mine very easily. I'm curious if you had something that like you felt like was a breakthrough that you got through.
A breakthrough?
Or not necessarily a breakthrough, something you knew you had to deal with, and then you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've never had any breakthroughs as much as plateau increase, plateau increase. There were smaller, I guess, breakthroughs, just an increase, a small incremental change in my understanding of something, and then that there's more like keys and unlocked doors. So I guess in that way it was a breakthrough. Most of them were centered around, and I feel like I've struggled with this all my life, and every artist usually does, overworking. Overworking is, and there's several ways you can do it, through medium, through muddy color, but I'm speaking specifically of wanting to detail everything and do it too soon and over detail something, overpaint something. So always wrestle with that.
It's interesting to hear this from you, because I personally don't feel like I ever struggled with that. It's like I always know when to stop. But for me, like after I'm done with it, I figure out that I'm missing some stuff. But I think that's more for real. Like they are missing, But it's interesting to hear this.
It's something I always have. I feel like I can do it and I can identify it, but I'm always having to hold myself back. Because there's a part of art that's just sort of zen, kind of sitting in enjoyment, like coloring in a coloring book. And sometimes if you're not thinking about the piece, you're thinking about that part of it, you're just into what you're doing. And so I have to always hold that part back. I mean, as a professional, even illustrator, you have to kind of learn where to draw the line. But I still feel like I struggle with it. I wrestle with it, and how to simplify and make things fresher and more spontaneous. So I really work at that.
Yeah, I get it. So we're going to touch upon a few small watercolor related questions later on. I want to talk a bit about YouTube. And first off, maybe why did you start your YouTube channel? Like, generally, and also how are the first days of just getting started with it? I'm curious, because there's so much to learn and so much to,
Yeah, I was looking for something that maybe I could do to take me into retirement that was different than what I had done to support my family all our life, and something that was more fun. I also had the idea that I would love to do instructional video, and I had that idea right about the time YouTube was started. I wasn't thinking of using YouTube. What a lot of artists were doing is they were uploading video to their websites, and I was trying to figure out a way to make that pay as a business model. And so actually, probably 5 years, maybe 7 years before starting YouTube, I had this kind of rolling around in my head. I was experimenting with lighting. I had a kind of a cheap video camera, was experimenting with that. Not doing anything seriously, but still not able to figure out how to make it work, in a business model. So I think 2013 rolled around, and I found some people on YouTube who told you how to do it, how to make it work.
And that's probably 5 years into YouTube, no, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. But that is. Daryl Eves is one.
Daryl Eves.
Another one is major one. Tim Schmoyer. Another one is Amy Schmittauer. at the time she had a site. It's called something different now. At the time, it was called Savvy Sexy Social. She put out 3 videos a week. By sexy, she meant in the business sense. And she had a lot of great tips. She's still making videos, but they're not under that moniker anymore. So those 3, and then I just, you know, when the first 2014 rolled around, I started training heavily in video editing. I thought I need to get this down.
Yeah.
And by the end of that winter, before spring, somewhere in March, I had made my trailer, my channel trailer. I was terrified to put it out on. I was terrified. And I didn't know, my wife and I had some discussions about I wanted to do this. And she wasn't sure it would work. She had a lot of questions. And I finally, you know, the more detail and things I learned, and after she saw my trailer, she goes, "Oh, you got to do this." And are you married?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well,
I have a girlfriend.
If you're married, you know how much, you know, happily married, and I am happily married, you know how much
their opinion counts.
Their opinion and their support counts. And I knew if I had her behind me that I would be able to do it. But I sat on that trailer, that video trailer. I sat on that thing. I was scared. I was trying to get all my ducks in a row. And I wanted to have at least 5 episodes made before I launched my channel.
Yeah.
And what was I going to make? And so I started writing down all these ideas. And it was coming to the end of June. And my wife said, "Oh, for heaven's sake, just launch your channel and put it out there." And so I only had 2. I only had 2 episodes made besides my channel trailer. You know, and so end of June, I think it was the last week of June, first week of July, 2014, and I put out my very first episode was on paper. And I look like a paper cutout. If you go back, you can still watch my paper episode. And there are errors in that, by the way. Lots of errors.
Wow.
I look like a mannequin paper cutout, just talking to the camera. Horrible.
The moment
horrible.
Okay.
I can't stand to look at it. I did put some humor in there because I was trying to loosen myself up. People don't realize that a lot of times when I put humor into my things, it's really corny, I know, but I do it to keep from taking myself too seriously, you know. That's another issue. But so that's when I started. And yeah, you know what it's like. The first month you're looking at YouTube 5 times a day to see how many subscribers you have. And I did a celebration video after the first 100.
That's amazing. One of my favorite vids. I love that one.
I was so happy. It's like, I got 100 subscribers.
You know, it's funny. I watched that one like really delayed because I got later on into the scene. And when I watched it initially, I was sure it's 100,000. And then I had to do a double take. I'm like, oh, does he mean 100? That's like,
I meant 100.
It does show, I think, you know, it shows gratitude. And I think that's one of the most important things that I see with creators in general that really make it is that they do have a lot of gratitude towards their audience or their support, you know, no matter how big or small it is, because it's the same. It doesn't feel different, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what it also represented for me? You know, it's like looking at Mount Everest, and most people can't figure out how to climb it. But if you can see a staircase going to the top, you know you can get there.
Yes.
And that first 100 was like the first flight of stairs for me. It was like, if I can get 100, I can get 1,000, I can get 10,000, I can get 100,000.
Yeah.
And the most exciting thing to me, I just have to tell you this, the most exciting thing to me is that the comments that were coming back, they liked me. They liked my personality, my demeanor, and I was just being myself. And I thought, if I can do this just being myself, and if people don't like that, and you probably wrestled with this when you first launched your channel, if people don't like you, you know, that's the ultimate rejection. And that was the thing that terrified me from starting my channel. you know.
Yeah.
And if you try to hide yourself, you know, with scripts and recited, slick, smooth
Yeah, I get it. It
production,
just
people
comes off
don't
as
like that.
inauthentic. And it reminds me when I got started, I had a lot of these questions with myself of what kind of videos should I do, like on a micro level, what's the next video I'm gonna do. And okay, so I would check and I see that someone already did that kind of video, and already, and I think the biggest unlock for me was people watch it because of me, not because of the specific topic. And it's surely true for you. People enjoy your take on it. They enjoy to hear what you have to say on it, and they'll watch your video just because it's you. And I think that's an amazing experience. And it's really something to be grateful for. And it's such a big something that frees you to just, okay, so I can do whatever I want.
So true. And it was just an exciting thing to me. And I thought, because if you put yourself on, if you put on something that you're not, I, 6 months down the road, how are you going to remember how you were acting then? I thought, I always know who I am. I always know how to act the way I am. So I was just so excited. And I was so excited that people were accepting of that. And like you just said, it's so freeing. And I was just real excited. That 100, I mean, I'm grateful for every single milestone. When I hit 100,000, that was very exhilarating, but in a different way. When I've hit that first 100, I realized that these were steps I could continue taking, and I could just keep climbing. When I hit 100,000, I felt more like somebody who had just gone through college and was marching across the stage and getting their degree. It's a different feeling. It was more of a feeling of relief, like all that work has finally paid off and I've done it. I've not done it, but that's the first stage of most people in life, in their career, is getting their degree. I felt like 100,000 was like getting my degree. So it was a different feeling. But yeah, you said it really well, Liron. It's all about gratitude and realizing that those people, are watching and helping and sort of pushing you forward with their enthusiasm. So
yeah, that's incredible. And I knew we'd get to something interesting like that. So this is really the things that interest me the most. I have a question. I know a lot of people are curious about that as well in regards to your YouTube channel. That is, can you tell us more about Reese? He seems to be the quiet type.
I've told this story to a couple people, and I was looking for the right opportunity. I think this is probably good. It's not a huge, big story, but Reese has been with me for 30 years. I was in a craft store. People in the States know what Michael's is. It's an it's a national chain of craft stores. And they were clearing out a lot of their plastic models, right? So here it was sitting. It was an open box model. They had it on this end cap, clearing it out, and it was like dirt cheap. And so I bought it, and I thought, I'm an artist. It'd be great to have a human skull around as an artist model. So I bought it. Put together, it was limited assembly. You had a nose piece and a jaw, and you had to glue in all the teeth. But other than that, it was real easy. And it looked really kind of yellow and greenish.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. So I took some of my brown acrylic paint and I gave him a antiquing stain all over. And I was working with some fellow, I actually shared an office with a fellow illustrator and some other guys that we would kind of get together, and they thought, oh man, that looks real. It looks like you dug it up out of the ground. So he's got this sort of brownish antique stain on him. So he sat around in my studios, and I've been in, let's see, since I got him, I've been in 1, 2, 3, 5 different studios since then, and he's always
Wow.
been there. So he's like a fixture
Hmm.
in my studio. And when I started, when I was where I am now and where I do most of my recording now, he sits over on top of my paper shelf. And one of my daughters had recently to Hershey, Pennsylvania is where they manufacture
Mhm.
Reese.
You got cut off for a second, so you said your daughter again?
My daughter, sorry about that. My daughter took a trip to Hershey, Pennsylvania,
Yeah, yeah.
where they make not only Hershey bars, but Reese's peanut butter cups.
Oh, okay.
It's my favorite candy. Um, I could probably live off of Reese's, although I'd probably die pretty quick. But I could eat a whole bag of like Reese's cups in one sitting, regardless of how sick it make me. Anyway,
Yeah, I love
so
those too. I have to
yeah.
admit, it's
So
one of the best.
in her trip, she brought me back a hat, a
Mhm.
Reese's peanut butter cup hat, and I don't wear hats a lot, but I didn't want to just shove this in the closet with the rest of my hats. So the most logical hat stand was he wasn't called Reese then. I put it on him, and for long I was calling him Reese. So that's the story of Reese, and it really has a bigger sort of meaning. I I wanted to keep him as part of my videos, so that humor I was telling you about, so I wouldn't take myself so seriously. There were so many art instructional videos out there where the person just sounded like they were giving, eulogy at a funeral, and it was I didn't want it to be. I wanted this to be fun. I wanted it to be, just almost like a virtual way of hanging out at the water
Mhm.
cooler, so to speak, and trading ideas. And the Reese is just the way to remind myself that this is all supposed to be fun,
Mhm.
and we can enjoy watercolor and fun, and I don't
Yeah.
have to be really super serious about this instruction. So that's the story.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and it's really, I think, one of the things that attracted me to your channel in the first place. By the way, I think I just figured out how to show myself as well in the live, so all there was up until now is you, and that's totally fine. I'm gonna crop myself in there somehow. That's okay. That's for the first try, and yeah, that's really interesting. I wanted to maybe go into some more current stuff and ask you if there is like a project or something that you've been working on right now, something that excites you that you're working on right now, and maybe even your audience or people here don't know about.
Um, well, there are things that I want to get to, I guess. I wish I could say I was working on them. They're like things that I want to get to. I have really neglected my Skillshare classes. I really intended when I started that to put out more regular content over there, and I still have a lot of calls for it. I've just spent so much time building this channel that it's been hard. Um, and I have actually one workshop in the can, just needs to have voiceover put to it, and I would be able to upload it. I've only got 2 there right now, so that's something I guess is a project that's been on hold but needs to resume. And I really like Skillshare because it's a social platform of sorts that I understand how the growth works over there. So that's still coming. I haven't abandoned Skillshare, even though I've not put anything new there for a long time. Um, more immediate, starting Friday is the 30 by 30 challenge, which I'm going to be participating in. That's a 30 paintings in 30 days challenge.
Oh, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, well, and it's direct watercolor. It's called the Direct Watercolor Challenge, and it's being spearheaded by Mark Terrell Holmes, who is a he put out the book called Direct Watercolor,
Mm-hmm.
and he does these very loose, expressive, plein air paintings, and it's meant to be plein air. And I will probably do some of them. I don't know whether I'll make 30 or not. There are no enforced rules, but I really need the quick, fast, expressive practice. You know, since I tend to be more of a planned studio painter, I really need something like this. I know we've got World Watercolor Month then right on the heels of that, and I don't know if I'll be participating in that.
What
officially.
is that?
World Watercolor Month.
Okay. I just didn't know that's a thing.
Yeah, and I can't all of a sudden think of the guy's name. I'm sure somebody will add it to the comments and I could go look, but he started that a few years ago. It's actually an official date on the calendar now. So July is officially World Watercolor Month. And he has a challenge.
Great.
He has a challenge with daily prompts.
Like specific things to
paint? Like specific things or subjects that you can interpret creatively or whatever. And I think it'd be great to participate in that. I haven't in the past, just because I haven't had the time. This 30 by 30 challenge was the first thing I really wanted to try to participate in and do all 30. Because even
in particular,
Inktober,
because it's loose and kind of
it's
expressive.
Yeah, because it's something I really feel like I need to exercise. You know, even Inktober, I tend to kind of half-hearted. I love Inktober, but I try to half-heartedly participate. I usually get 6 or 7 done. So I don't know.
Mine is 9,
them all.
so it's
not
much better.
Yeah, right. But we'll see. But
I love these challenges. I love these challenges, and I think it's good because many times art is you really have to push to make the connections and to meet other artists that you can vibe with and that you can art with, I guess. And these kinds of events really connect. I think the community.
Yeah, that's true. They really do, and I'm for anything that pushes your comfort level. Because living within your comfort level is just one of the most dangerous things that an artist can do. I mean, if I say
you're
that,
insular, and
I say that only if you're looking to really grow. Some artists don't care. I mean, I'm all for the leisure time painter that just likes to stay in their bubble, and if that's what they want to do, that's fine. But if you want to grow, you got to get out of your comfort zone. And it's not comfortable. So that's
why it's called that way.
The connection, that's a good point. That's important.
So I have just a couple of small questions, and then I think we will wrap it up. I wanted to ask you about your favorite color and your least favorite color. You can name a brand, or you don't have to name a brand, just in terms of color.
Favorite color is Prussian blue. That's my favorite color. I use it in just so many mixes, so many ways. Not particular. I mean, I like M. Graham and I like theirs. I was kind of brokenhearted recently because Denise Soden in Liquid Color, I don't know if you're familiar with her channel.
I'm familiar with her, yes.
Found out that the M. Graham version fades a little bit. So I'm still kind of thinking that one over, but I may try some other brands and see. But anyway, that's my favorite color. Least favorite? I don't know that I have a least favorite. I don't like opaque watercolors. That some watercolors are naturally opaque, just because they tend to muddy stuff up in your mixes. I don't know that one stands out though.
I guess you don't like mud. That's also a good one.
I don't like to think about mud all the time. And I remember probably 20 years ago, watercolor, I get mud all the time and wonder why. And I just hadn't educated myself enough in the reasons for it. And some of it involved student grade paint, which has a lot of opaque pigments. or more opaque. So I don't know. But I can't really think of one color that I just absolutely positively hate. They all have their use, I guess.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. I'm all for the Prussian blue, by the way. For me, it's like the French ultramarine. I just run out of tubes at an incredible pace. So yeah. So I wanted to ask you also. That's, I think, a good way to wrap it up. If you have any advice for young artists, maybe if you could, like, an advice you would have given yourself when you just got started, or something like this. Like, we talked about many things, but I wonder if there's something in particular we haven't mentioned, or that you'd like to add.
Oh, there's so many things I could tell myself, my younger self. I think most artists just don't draw enough.
As in, do the work, like, actually.
They just don't draw. Drawing should be a regular practice, weekly. And even as I say this, I don't do it as much even now as I should. But you should draw every day if you can, every week if you can. Most people than you're drawing now. You will be a better painter if you become a better drafts person, I guess is the way to say it. The better you can draw, the better you'll be able to paint. A lot of people don't think there's a connection. They just want to skip, and be the best painter they can. But, we really ought to, I think every young artist, budding artist, should take a step back and assess their drafting and their drawing skills, and just become more expressive, more immediate, more essential with the subjects. It pays great dividends. And the few times that I have really kind of put the pedal to the metal with drawing and focusing on my drawing, it's always paid big dividends, always.
Yeah, I can really relate. I started this local watercolor group here, and the one thing now that you said it, connected the dots for me. The one thing that I would say is missing is the basic drawing skills, because it's really hard to base a good painting off of that. I think it's just really hard. Even if I would try to take the drawing and turn it into something, it'll be a challenge,
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who have asked for critiques. And generally, I don't do critiques, but that's another story.
It's rough.
Problem,
critiques are rough.
It really is. And 9 times out of 10, I look at their piece. I thought the biggest problems here are not with painting. We need to get all the way back to the basics of drawing here. So yeah.
I get it. I got lucky in a sense, because I really started with drawing, and just kept at it as long as I can remember myself. So that's really a plus.
And I can tell that in your work.
Thank you. And it's really something that I've taken for granted for a long time. I didn't realize the impact it was making, I think. Yeah. So Steve, thank you so much. This has been great.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad you wanted to do this.
Yeah, so that's like a first hangout for me, first interview as well. And you're the first person I thought about turning to, really.
Wow, that is so nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And now that I figured out how they can see both of us, that'll be an improvement for next time. And yeah, that's it. I really want to thank you for the work you do, really. I will keep following, and I keep learning on a regular basis all the time, more and more. It never stops,
As do we all.
Yes.
Yep.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll wrap it up. I think we're going to stay for a few moments, but I'm going to cut the recording now. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you'll enjoy this one.